Hey friends, we're going to talk about driving and what we learned to drive on bike in the 70s and 80s. Hey friends, it's Billy T. Gardner, T. Gardner today. You know, been sitting here thinking about growing up in the 70s and 80s, and two things came to mind. One, learning to drive. But before we get started, please, if you don't mind, go down and subscribe. Helps me out so much, and don't cost you anything, no obligations or nothing. If you don't like me, remove me later. It's what I do. It's just what I say on my other channel. And don't forget my other channel in the kitchen where we bake, make, and fix your favorite recipes, treats, and eats. We make some great stuff over there. So go over and try it. It's Tea Gardens in the kitchen. As we go, please like, comment, share, please share everywhere to get my content out. I got some viewers, but I need more subscribers. So please do that. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so you know when my next video comes out. So let's get into this driving thing. Well, learn to drive tractor sitting on my grandfather's lap, like probably many of you did, or an old truck or whatever, on the farm. And as I got older, drove them myself. Hay wagons or pulling a silage chopper or hay baler or whatever, If you come from a farm, you know what I mean. And really learned to drive on a little Ford 3600. Well, this thing had a hitch on the front and a hitch on the back. Well, wasn't very old, maybe 10 or so. And we'd use the front hitch and push wagons in the barn. Well, this was hard because you had the pivot of the tractor to the wagon, then you had the steering of the wagon itself. And this wasn't easy at all. So many, many, many times I'd go to push one in the barn, and get it all out of whack stuff. My grandfather would be sitting over to the right and stuff, getting on me and stuff, telling me to come on and all. Well, I'd get mad and, start crying, I guess, and tell my papa, I'm going to the house, I'm done with this. And he'd say, well, get back up there on that tractor. And I would, and over time, I'd finally get that wagon in the barn. Well, we wasn't done yet. Had to turn around and take the wagon behind the tractor and back it in the barn. Same thing, two pivot points. And like I said, over time, I got pretty good at this. So we get through with lunch one day, and I wasn't very old at all. I think I was 2, 3 years old or so. And my grandfather, he smoked cigarettes and chewed tobacco both. Now, telling this, I'm not condoning smoking or cigarettes or nicotine or nothing like that. But this is just a story of it. My grandfather, he chewed tobacco in the summer a lot. And I agged on him and agged on him and agged on him. Peppa, give me a chew. Peppa, give me a chew. He chewed Levi Garrett. You probably know what that is, if you're from a farm, or maybe, maybe you're not from a farm, but it's quite a bit different than anything else. So finally, one day he gave me a chew of tobacco. Well, I started getting sick and carrying on and stuff, and I took off from the barn and ran up to the house. And I looked at my grandmother. My grandmother, to the day she died, she laughed at this story. She said, I looked up at her and said, Mama, I expect I need a drink of water. She said I was green and white and everything else and was throwing up. Well, they thought that would break me from smoking or dipping, or whatever. So I was older, 16, and I still hadn't told my grandparents I smoked. So one day I was sitting at the kitchen table getting my nerve up. You just don't want to let your grandparents down. You know what I mean? So I decided to sit there and play with my Zippo lighter. And finally, my grandfather looks up at me and he asked me what I'm doing with a lighter. And I said, well, I smoke. That was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. And to the day that both my grandparents died, I still never once smoked a round down. Never did. Just didn't feel right. Just respected them that much. So, uh, leave me a comment. What did you learn to drive on? An old farm truck or tractor or what? Did you learn to drive a standard? How old was you? How old was you before you could do it by yourself? We had a little store not too far from us over at Rose Mill. And even at 13, 14 years old, so 12 maybe, I had mini bikes and, everything else. Well, my grandmother would send me to the store to pick up stuff from her. You could charge stuff. So she'd call ahead and the lady that run the store, she'd have stuff ready when I got there and all and charge it. And I'd drive back home. This being a tractor or an old truck or, four wheeler, mini bike or motorcycle when I got older or whatever, dirt bike. So, that's just the way things was back in the 70s and 80s. But did your parents, grandparents send you to the store like that, to get stuff for them? You remember the little country stores you used to charge and stuff? You could get the best ham and cheese or bologna and cheese sandwiches that ever hit this earth. I mean, they were just awesome, wasn't they? I thought so. I mean, they were just out of this world. And, there's another store there, but many times me and my dad would stop there and we'd always get vanilla cupcakes, which I don't think you can find anymore. You can find the orange ones, but I don't think you can find the vanilla ones and a chocolate milk. Many days I remember doing that. So, anyways, like I said, what'd you learn to drive on? Tractor, truck, you know, uh, and our stuff didn't have any brakes 3/4 of the time. Tractors didn't have brakes. You just geared down, and half the time you just shut the key off or pulled, the kill, and you just, kill them. You just learn to drive that way. You know what I mean? So, by the time I was 15 years old, I already had two cars. I had a 64 Rambler my grandfather gave me, wish I still had it today. And then I also had a 76 Olds Cutlass, had a 350 Rocket in it that my mama gave me. We still have both of them today. And anyways, with the chewing tobacco, smoking, whatever, if you did or do or whatever, how did you tell your grandparents or parents? Did they just find out or, I used to sneak my grandparents and I don't see how in the world they didn't know. And I've got a cousin to this day, I run into him very once in a while and he still remembers the brand and everything, they smoked and, what have you. Well, and today I wished I'd have never started none of that. And that's what they was trying to keep from, but of course it didn't work. So how did your parents, grandparents, whatever find out? Did you get caught or did you tell them or what? So anyways, just a few things in there about growing up in the 70s and 80s, and things I just happen to remember and stuff. So anyways, leave me something in the comments. Would you learn to drive on or what have you? And what about using a bike? And did you ever start? Or did you have if you grew up on a farm, you was around the bike and stuff. My grandfather, he would take it right out of the barn and he would twist it and dry it out, make his own, chewing tobacco and all that. That's a different ball game there. That's some strong stuff. No, I could today. I don't think it bothered me. But anyways, like I say, how did your parents, grandparents, family learn? Did you tell them or did they catch you or what? Leave me a comment. Let me know. I'd be interested. Let's talk about this a little bit. So anyways, friends, I just thought I'd throw that out there. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. If you watch this video all the way through, thank you so much. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Please subscribe. Like I say, a lot of viewers, but not many subscribers, and I sure would appreciate it. And comment, and don't forget to turn your notifications on, and go over and check out In the Kitchen where we, make and bake some awesome stuff. I'm always cooking, so maybe you'll learn something. Leave me some comments. What do you think? So anyways, thank you guys so much. Love y'all. Take care. This is Billy T. Garden. T. Gardens Today. See ya.